Welcome back to They Reminisce Over You. I'm Miguel.
And I'm Christina.
And this week we are doing an episode about one of my favorite singers of all time.
Who could that be?
That would be Mr. Usher Raymond IV, singer, songwriter, dancer, part-time actor, all that stuff.
What a coincidence. I like him too.
Really?
Yeah.
I think we should talk about it. What do you think about that?
Let's do it.
That was quite silly. So Usher got his start just being a little kid trying to be a singer. He was in this group called New Beginnings, apparently.
Oh,
and
I did not know that.
Some group that was put together by a local promoter in Chattanooga, where he's from, Tennessee boy. He was eventually found by Bobby Brown's bodyguard, who then put him in touch with people in Atlanta, and he ended up working out and getting a deal with LaFace.
Mm-hmm.
They decided to bring him in, and he was off and running from that point. Not gonna lie, his first couple songs, not a fan. That album is a bit much for me, listening to it coming from a 14, 15-year-old kid.
Yeah. The first album was a little bit tainted for me as well because I'm an adult now.
Right.
And even though we're basically the same age, I mean, he's like a year older than me.
Okay.
So listening to it at the time, even though at that age I was like, okay, this is a lot for, but you know, you're the same age, so
right.
You're like, whatever, right? But listening to a kid as an adult is a little bit weird.
Yeah, because I was an adult at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Barely an adult. I was like 18.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's kind of like, okay, teenagers are doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the stuff you talking about, nigga, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Not at all. You're doing too much. You got a little too much dip on your chip, player.
Well, the thing is, okay, I'm not naive. And also,
right.
As a teenager, I knew other teenagers were having sex
yes.
too, right? But the way he's singing about it is a little mature.
Yeah. And
it's not the way teenagers do it.
Exactly. You're trying to hide this stuff from people.
Yeah.
Whereas he's putting it out there, letting the world know, hey, this is what I'm doing.
Slow
like,
love. Come on now.
But at the same time, we mentioned this in our very first or second episode, talking about Tevin Campbell with people who are singing songs that are way too mature for them. You had Tevin, Usher, Monica, immature. Brandy was probably looking in somebody's window like, man, I wish I could be as cool as they are.
Monica's window.
Yeah. Aaliyah.
Yeah.
So all of these kids are singing songs that they shouldn't be singing, and we just let that shit fly.
But I think Usher was probably the most explicit, though.
Yeah, he was by far the worst.
Yeah, because even with Tevin Campbell, he was a little bit older by the time he was more explicit.
Yeah.
Like, do you after school, like some homework? But at least, I think he was maybe at least 17 at the time.
Right.
Whereas Usher was like 15 when this album came out, which means he was probably 14 when he recorded it.
And he looked every second of 14 years old.
He looks like a baby, as someone rudely said on Twitter, fat face Usher. It's like, it's not a fat face, it's a baby face.
It's funny to see him that young and that small because you can see him there, like the Usher we know now, but he looks like a tiny little baby.
He does.
Especially in the, I think it's the Call Me a Mac video.
Yeah.
No, it's the Can You Get With It video.
Okay.
When Diddy picks him up from school because he pretends he got a headache and a nosebleed, and he comes out wearing this Laker jersey he just swimming in, and these huge Timberlands that he's got
Puss in
on.
Boots.
Yeah, basically. Like, this is a child.
Yeah.
And he's riding around hanging out with Diddy. This is not a good thing.
Literally on the hood of the car.
Yeah.
So we're talking about his debut album, self-titled Usher, 1994.
Yeah.
But at the same time, these songs are the reflection of the producers and the writers.
It was.
Devontae, like, Can You Get With It is so Devontae.
It is. Like, we got all these kids out here singing these adult songs.
Like I said, for me, I'm a year younger than him, and so it seemed less weird. I was kind of like a goody two-shoes in that sense. So even though I knew my peers were doing it, it was more like tittillating to me rather than inappropriate. But as an older person, listening, just like, he was like 14, 15.
Right. I think if I had been in his circle at that time, I and people that I hung out with would have been telling him stuff like, you lying. You ain't doing that shit. You making all this stuff up.
Yeah.
But it was 1993, 94.
Yeah. I guess maybe like because the way he sings it, he doesn't sound like a kid.
Right.
I mean, he does have a young voice.
His voice is very light.
Yeah. And just listening to it now compared to how he sounds now, like you could tell he was much younger when he recorded this. But he doesn't sound like a kid. Like the first Immature album, they sounded like little kids.
Right.
Right. They're singing about, what was their song? I got the munchies for you.
I don't even remember.
Oh man, totally inappropriate, but it's made to sound like a kid song. It's like, I got the munchies for you, baby, or something like that.
I don't remember
still
that at
inappropriate. That was when they still had the little Asian kid.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Who was last seen in the House Party movie, but we can move on.
Yeah. Anyways, like they sounded like kids, but Usher sounded young. But he managed to sing these songs without sounding like a kid.
Right.
And I think maybe that's why it kind of flew under the radar for even for older people or adults listening to it. Like it makes sense for teenagers because, you know, when you're 14, 15, 16, you think you're grown anyway, right? So it's not weird to us, I suppose, or as weird. But yeah, just looking at it now, it's like, why is Devontae and Diddy and with Jermaine Dupri on this album too?
No.
Was it, okay, this is like Babyface and stuff, right? Why are they making this music for a child? I mean, inappropriateness aside, I still like the album in terms of, you know, how it sounds or whatever. Like my favorite song is Think of You. And it's a very typical of Diddy circa 1994. It's kind of like got the little hip hop undertones and sounds like Mary J. and Jodeci at that time, like very much that 1994, 93.
Well, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say this is the reason why you like that song and you don't even know this is the reason why you like that song. The sample, because you're a big East Coast hip hop fan.
Dun, dun, dun.
And you got that Black Moon who got the prop sample. It's like it was already in you.
As soon as the song starts, they just get dun, dun, dun.
So I can see that would be your favorite song on the album.
And then the close second is Can You Get With It, because it's
Jodeci.
Jodeci. It's produced by Devontae. It sounds exactly like Devontae.
Without even knowing, I was going to be able to predict the two songs that you would like.
You know what's funny about this, us talking about him being a child recording this? So I've been doing the Peloton workouts, right? And they have like these artist series. And so I was doing an Usher yoga artist series workout, and the instructor, I'm thinking she's probably around our age or maybe a little bit younger, but and she's obviously an Usher fan. She's doing this workout and she starts it off. I can't remember which song she played, but it was definitely from this album. I think it might have been Think of You. And she was like, this is grown folk music. And I get what she means because grown folk is in like people our age listen to this, but it's just funny that she's referring to like a 15-year-old's music as grown folk music.
Because it was.
But it was grown folk music then because he had no business singing about all that stuff.
Not at all. It's just funny how sensibilities change because I didn't have a problem with it then. I just didn't believe it. It's not like, oh, you should be singing that, young man. It's like, I know you doing it, but you're not doing it like that. So just calm down, little nigga. That was my impression.
Yeah.
So you've given your favorite song on this album. I'm going to say Think of You as well for the same reason, just because I like the sample. But on a whole, not my favorite album because he's younger than me. I wasn't believing in what he was saying. So it's like, you know what? Come back again next year and try it again because I don't believe in you.
And then he did. Well, not next year, a couple years.
Yeah, it was a couple years in between.
One more thing I wanted to mention about the first album.
Okay.
There's a lot of Faith all over this. She was singing background vocals for, I think, like the majority of the songs.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that too. Glad you brought it up because it's funny that people we know now as stars, we didn't know then. Like she's background vocals, co-writing most of the songs on the album. Like, wait a minute, I know this name, and had no idea that I've been listening to Faith Evans since 1993.
Yep. And she's like prominently on this album. Like even though she's singing background vocals, like you can't miss her. Right.
Now that I see it, it's like, oh, how did I miss this? But because I didn't know who Faith Evans was when it originally came out. All right, so moving on to his second album, My Way. He links up with another tiny man from Atlanta, Jermaine Dupri, who has a penchant for working with younger people. Yeah. It seems to be his thing. He's the molder of young talent, I guess. And he was hooked up with JD and they produced the My Way album. I don't remember the last time I listened to this either, but this was probably what really got me into Usher was this album. The My Way video is kind of weird. him and Tyrese having dance battles in a junkyard.
I
But
forgot about that. I just watched it before we recorded this. Is this supposed to be like the Warriors?
I don't know what it's supposed to be. I'm sure it's a reference to something. I don't know what it is.
They're doing that very theatrical games.
Yeah.
So it made me think of the Warriors.
Warriors, West Side Story.
Or like a colorful Mad Max.
Yeah, it's a lot.
A lot of dancing in abandoned
Right.
buildings and dirt and stuff.
And costumes and
Yeah.
makeup. But yeah, I like this one as well.
While we're talking about kids being too grown, he's got a duet with Monica on this one, Slow Jam.
Yes.
There's no way these two kids should sound like this.
Not at all.
He was at least, I think, maybe 17, 18 by now.
Right.
But she was still a couple years younger.
Mhm.
She's a teenager.
Right.
And they just sound grown.
Like Sherelle and Alexander O'Neill.
Yeah. Is it a cover? Or it sounds like a cover? Or is it just because of the way they're singing it?
Yeah, it's just because of the way they're singing it.
Because it sounds like an old song, too.
Yeah. No, I think it's an original.
Okay.
As far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, but I just think it's a babyface original.
I didn't look it up, but even if it is an original, it definitely sounds like a cover because the way they're singing it, they just sound like grown.
Right. Another song that's really inappropriate, even though he's a little bit older now, is Nice and Slow.
Yeah.
But at least he was a little bit older, so
Yeah.
I'll accept it at this point.
I think at this point, he should have at least been 18.
I wrote it down here, so he's 19.
Okay, because it was 1997.
Yeah, so I'll accept it at this point. Like, it's a little more believable than on the first album.
Yep. Was it Nice and Slow that Kimora Lee Simmons was in the video?
I don't remember. I didn't watch this video.
Because there's a video, I'm pretty sure it's Nice and Slow, where she gets kidnapped by some gangsters or something.
Man.
I think they put her in a cage.
I definitely need to look this up.
Definitely Kimora was in it. And I'm pretty sure there's some kind of kidnapping. And he had to go rescue her. But I'm having visions of her being like locked up.
Oh, that's funny.
I watched a couple videos, but not as many as I usually do.
Right.
Didn't get to it this time. Yeah, I think this album kind of solidified him as one to watch because although the first album was good, it was still, he's a kid.
Yeah.
He's kind of new. And this is a little more refined and mature, I guess.
Yeah. And it started a working relationship with him and JD.
Right. Which was a good combination.
Yeah. And it's been fruitful for both of their careers ever since.
So there's some obvious jams on this one. You Make Me Wanna, Nice and Slow. But my favorite one is One Day You'll Be Mine.
Yep.
And you know why.
I do. Same reason I like it.
The sample.
Yep.
I don't know the original song, but it's the same sample that Ice Cube uses.
It's Isley Brothers, Between the Sheets.
Between the Sheets. Duh. That's been sampled, 300 times? Something.
Oh, is it Between the Sheets?
Wait.
No, it's Footsteps in the Dark.
Footsteps in the Dark.
Yeah.
Which has also been sampled a bajillion times. But I think my first frame of reference for it was Ice Cube. It Was a Good Day. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not me. My first reference is listening to my stepfather playing the Isley Brothers over and over again.
Yeah. Well, for me, I did not grow up in that kind of household. My parents, if we have any Vietnamese listeners, then y'all know about this Paris by Night stuff. That's what I grew up hearing my parents listen to. So they were not listening to the Isley Brothers.
I really wanted to get on some Paris by Night the last time we were there.
But yeah, so most of these 70s songs and stuff I've discovered through just looking up samples of different R&B and hip hop songs. But since I like R&B and I like hip hop, if they use the same sample, I can enjoy it on both sides. Right? I could listen to Ice Cube and I could listen to Usher and everything feels familiar. And then I can listen to Isley Brothers.
Exactly. You can take it all the way back.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite song? Oh, you just told me.
Yeah, which is also your favorite song.
It is Surprise, Surprise.
Yeah, I would say this is a pretty solid second album as well. Although we haven't gotten to a no skip album yet. There are still songs that I'm just like, meh.
Yeah, you can see the Usher that we know now being formed on this album. It's kind of like the beginnings of Usher. And on his next album is where it really pretty much all came together.
Yeah, because he's an adult now, at least.
Yes.
He's finally at an age where this doesn't seem weird.
Right. Like, I don't think you should be saying that, at least not in public. The next album was 8701. It was originally supposed to be called All About You, but you know, we are living in a time that albums were just getting leaked left and right. So a lot of this album ended up getting leaked to the internet, and they decided to just go ahead and scrap it and start over. They kept a couple songs, but for the most part, they just scrapped it all. I remember a sampler of the album with like 30-second snippets of different songs and whatnot. And one of them was Just a Friend by Mario, was originally done by Usher.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was one of the songs that ended up getting leaked. And all these songs you can find on YouTube. Pop Your Collar was actually released as a single. And if you get a chance, all you people out there, go watch the Pop Your Collar video. It's so ridiculous. I don't know if you got a chance to watch it. When we're done with this, we're going to watch it because it's so ridiculous. Like, he's dancing through the streets of downtown LA. He's playing football. He's working in a factory. It's just all these different ushers and different scenes, and it makes no sense. Like, he's dancing on top of fire trucks and kicking boxes in a warehouse and running back kickoffs for touchdowns. It is amazingly horrible, but it's pretty funny. And
sounds like a lot.
It is, but it's a song that didn't make the album. I think they released it on the European version of 8701. A couple more were You Are the One and TTP and UTurn. Again, you can find them on YouTube if you're interested, but the ones that did make the album were pretty solid.
Oh, speaking of UTurn, I wasn't expecting to hear that on one of my little Peloton rides as well.
Okay.
Just because, I mean, I guess just because I don't like it doesn't mean other people can't like it.
Right.
But it's just, of this album, that wouldn't be the song that I would pick. This one wasn't the Usher Artist Series. The instructor it was like I don't know, I think like a 2000s R&B mix or something like that.
That wouldn't be one that I would just pull out of nowhere to put on anything.
Surprised by that. I was like, okay, sure. But yeah, he's trying to make this dance,
right?
Trying to make fetch happen. Because I was like, I do not know what this UTurn dance is.
But it's called the UTurn, duh.
Okay. Of this album, that it would not be the song that I picked.
No.
Okay, so there's like the obvious hits, the singles or whatever.
Right.
You Remind Me, You Don't Have to Call, not Erykah Badu, It's Okay Squirrel. It's Okay Girl. But my favorite song on this one is Twerk It Out.
Okay, I can see that. It's not my favorite. I'm going to say You Remind Me is my favorite on this album. And I didn't realize that Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis had done so many songs on this album. I just assumed it was a couple by the Neptunes and the rest was Jermaine Dupri. But it was like, wait a minute. You Remind Me, Twerk It Out, Can You Help Me? That was all Jam and Lewis. And we need to do an episode on them, I think.
Okay.
Because every time we do a music artist, they get brought up.
Well, I was just thinking that we should do an episode on producers in general. We can start with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
So look out for that.
All right.
Jam and Lewis and the Neptunes. And I say that because we need justice for Chad Hugo. Yes. He was part of the Neptunes making all these hits.
It's not just Pharrell.
It's not just Pharrell. So justice for Chad Hugo.
Yeah.
Hashtag justice for Chad.
Okay.
But speaking of the Neptunes, 2 of these songs were actually written for Michael Jackson.
Okay.
And he's like, I don't want those. I want that what you did for Noriega. So he rejected them.
Okay.
But I Don't Know and You Don't Have to Call were written for Michael Jackson.
Interesting.
And basically the majority of Justin Timberlake's first album were all written for Michael Jackson. And they pitched them to him and he's like, nah, I want that Nori shit.
Because he wanted to try something new, I guess.
Mike knew what he wanted and this wasn't it.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw Pharrell talking about that on Drink Champs. Like, nah, I want that Nori shit.
That's funny. Just you saying justice for Hugo reminded me of something I had in my notes that I forgot to mention in the first album, the Can You Get With It, produced by Devante. But when I was looking at the credits, there's also a credit for one Timothy Mosley.
Yes.
AKA Timbaland.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff credited to Devante that Timbaland actually did.
maybe they worked on it together.
Hey, Timberlake actually did it.
Well, Timothy Mosley was added as a credit alongside Devontae.
Yeah, he got his credit. He didn't get producer credit, but
I can't remember what the credit was for. I just saw his name.
Probably like songwriting or drum programming or something.
I'll have to go back and see the particulars. But I was like, Timothy Mosley. I think I know who that is.
You sure do.
Okay, so back to this album, 8701, the You Don't Have to Call. How many times did you take a video when we were in the same hotel that they shot this video at, and we kept going down the elevators because you wanted to try to capture the one scene where they're like going down the elevators?
I don't know how many times.
And then you never posted it.
I didn't post it. But for anybody who has seen the You Don't Have to Call video, that is not a nightclub.
It's a hotel.
It's a hotel. Not only is it a hotel, but they filmed that part in a gym to make it look like a nightclub. And I know this because I used to work in this hotel. It's the Westin Bonaventure, downtown Los Angeles. That's not a nightclub that they're in. It's a hotel gym. And those little pods that they're sitting in are machines that have like chest flies and leg extensions. It's not a booth in a club.
So they had to take all that exercise equipment out?
No, it's 2 floors. So that section didn't have anything in it at the time. Okay. But yeah, it's a gym. He's rolling around on shoes with skates on them. Yeah. In a gym.
With little wheels. He's a little too old to be wearing those sneakers, wasn't he?
Yeah, I would think so.
I mean, it makes sense for the video, I guess.
Yeah, that's the only reason, but only 8-year-old should have been running around with those shoes on.
I have another little mini story about this album.
Okay.
So I was still in BC at the time, and I was working at HMV, a now defunct store that people don't buy CDs in person anymore. So this album had the explicit sticker label on it.
Okay.
I'm not really sure why. The only song that was labeled explicit when I looked at it on Tidal was You Don't Have to Call. And he says the N-word.
That's
I don't know. Okay.
That's the only reason.
Yeah. So I hadn't heard the album yet, but this woman came up to me and was like, oh, my 14-year-old daughter wants this, but what is this explicit label all about? And I was like, well, I haven't heard this album yet, but what I know of this artist, it's probably more sexually explicit than swearing. And she was like, oh, that's okay, as long as there's not any swearing on it. And I'm like, excuse me, didn't you just say 14-year-old?
Oh, man.
So I guess, all right. So she bought it for her. And Usher is also shirtless on the cover. I mean, I was listening to his first album when I was 14, but my mom did not buy it for me.
And your mom didn't give you that justification for buying it either. It's like, oh, as long as there's no cussing in it.
This is so the Outkast, I can't remember which album where they have the naked illustration on the CD of a woman.
It's a couple of them. I know that ATLians didn't, but there's 2 albums that have naked women on the CD.
So I took a black marker, put clothes on her so that my mom wouldn't see a naked woman on my CD. So she definitely was not buying me sexually explicit music when I was 14 years old, at least not knowingly.
Oh, man. People are weird.
I mean, maybe they have an open conversation about this kind of stuff.
I guess.
Anyway, so that's my little story.
All right. So what's your favorite song on this album?
Twerk It Out.
Oh, yeah. Duh.
You don't be listening to me.
I don't. I don't listen at all.
What's yours? Did you tell me? You remind me.
Yeah.
That was a close second, but something about Twerk It Out. I just like that one a little bit better.
Okay. So we move on to Confessions.
And I did not realize how big this album was until we saw some random tweet.
Yeah.
About the Billboard Top 100s 2004. So we've talked about the Billboard Top 100 many times being like, that's the non-genre specific chart. Right. And so when we say non-genre specific, usually you have to be really popular as a Black artist to like get #1 hits on that chart, or to chart a little higher there than like on the R&B hip hop charts. Usher dominated 2004. Not only was 2004 the first time that every single #1 hit on the top 100 was by a Black artist, he dominated for 6 months.
Yes.
With different songs from this album. Like that is
crazy.
Wild.
Basically 28 weeks of the year, Usher was at number one.
Yeah.
From February to August.
Yeah.
Except for 1 week in July where Fantasia snuck in there.
Somehow.
And then Usher went right back to number one.
Which I'm kind of surprised Fantasia was able to sneak in as well, just because of the type of artist she is.
Yeah.
Like at the top 100 to
right.
hit number one, even if it was just for a week.
Was this when she was on American Idol? Maybe that had something to do with it?
Well, it had to be after.
Right. But maybe that had something to do with it. Like, here's the one from American Idol. Check out her single. But for the weeks from February to August, he was number one. And then did it again for another 6 weeks in the fall.
So it was like Usher year.
Basically, more than half the year, he was number one on the charts with different songs from this album.
I just pulled it up. So it started with, from February 18th to May 15th. That song was number one. Not just on the charts, number one.
Yeah.
So February to May. And then followed up with Burn from May 22nd to July 3rd. Then Fantasia snuck in for that 1 week.
Right.
And then Burn came back for another week. And then Confessions Part 2 for 2 weeks. And then got knocked out by a slow motion.
Soulja Slim and Juvie.
And then he ended up back in the fall with My Boo with Alicia Keys from October 30th to December 4th. So it was just like Usher year. And we're just looking at the number 1 week. So I'm sure he was in the top 10.
Right.
Probably the whole year.
Yeah, you couldn't get away from it. Like, I knew it was big, but I didn't realize more than half the year he was number one on the charts big.
And it's also interesting, as we said already about the top 100, that this year, every single number one artist was a Black artist.
Yeah.
I was looking at the number ones from 1990 up to 2004. And there's always been a lot of Black artists, but not surprisingly, kind of like after 93, 94 was when there were more, because as we know, hip hop was starting to get more popular in R&B, especially like R&B infused hip hop too.
Right.
Because prior to that, in like the early 90s, it would be like Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, like more of the pop artists. So it's not surprising that after 93, 4, that there started to be more Black artists. But it's pretty interesting to see like every single artist at number one. And then Usher being half of the year.
Yeah. That album has sold over 10 million copies. And this is physical copies. We're not talking streaming numbers. This is when people were still going out and buying CDs. That is ridiculous.
Well, the thing that's hilarious about this album too, so, it's called Confessions, and he's confessing about cheating and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And everybody mad at him thinking he talking about Chili because they were dating and they broke up around this time. But all this time it was Jermaine Dupri's story.
Yeah. He's singing tales of Jermaine's outlandish life. And I never really understood why people would think that he's singing about Chili. On Confessions Part 1, he says that he was hanging out in LA with his ex. Confessions Part 2, he says he ended up getting a girl pregnant that he didn't even know. Right. It's like, these are two different people. So come on, read the context clues, people. Yeah. He's not talking about Chili. I was able to figure that out. I didn't need Jermaine to come out and say, hey, he's talking about me.
This ain't about him and Chili.
I always thought that was funny, though.
Well, even though this album was obviously super huge, as we had just explained, after doing these re-listens, I realized this is also my favorite album from him.
Me too. Like, as a full album, this is probably his best one.
Yeah, and this is a no-skip album for me. So this was actually where I decided to make that new rule that I need to be able to recognize every song.
Right.
Like, just by looking at the song title. So this one is one of those.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't say it's a no skip album because there are a couple that I do skip. But the ones that I like.
Right.
And with that said, what's your favorite one on this album?
So it was head to head.
Okay.
Ended up being between Superstar and Follow Me.
Okay.
And I ended up with Follow Me because I ended up playing them back to back, and that was the one that I wanted to keep listening to more.
Okay.
I don't know why I like that song so much, and considering there's so many hits, that the two that I like were non-singles.
Right.
But I love the whole album. But yeah, some other close ones I really like. Throwback with Jada Kiss. Right. Caught Up, Truth Hurts, Simple Things. But yeah, Follow Me.
Basically the whole album.
Yeah. Well, that's like half the album that I just listed.
Yeah. For me, my favorite is Burn, followed closely by Bad Girl.
Those two I like, but they were lower on the list for me.
Okay.
Interesting. Burn reminds me, what is that cartoon, Daddy's Home?
Oh,
where they have like
it's American Dad.
Yeah.
And one of the characters is just singing about his deadbeat dad that left him or something.
But in the style of...
Yeah, it's a very
like,
R&B record.
Yes, and he's in the cartoon animation. He's like shirt open, flying in the wind.
Everything you can think about a late 90s, early 2000s R&B video. I'll put a link to it. Like he's standing in the desert like Jodeci wearing a white linen suit with his shirt blowing.
So every time I hear Burn, I think of that.
Okay.
Daddy's home.
No, Daddy's gone.
Daddy's gone. Oh, yeah, because he's a deadbeat dad.
Oh, man, that's funny.
So the other thing that made me know that this album is like big was I remember I went home to visit and my oldest sister, she was playing this album. We were driving somewhere and she had the CD in. She's like, oh, I love this song. And it wasn't like Burn or whatever the big hits were. She was talking about Truth Hurts. No, not Truth Hurts. Simple Things. And I was like, you're listening like to the album, the CD, not just it's on the radio and I like this song. And it's not like, so she's about 10 years older than me. She was probably about 35 at the time, which not necessarily too old to like this album, but she was not listening to Usher.
Yeah.
So I was like, you're listening to like the whole CD.
I was hoping you were going to say Caught Up.
No.
Just to imagine her driving down the street dancing and singing Caught Up.
No, it was Simple Things because I remember her saying like, oh, that's so true. It's about the simple things. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, man.
Oh, and the other funny thing is, speaking of Truth Hurts, about the last minute of the song, he starts going into this ad-libbing.
Right.
And it's hilarious. So the whole song in Truth Hurts, like the first 2-3 minutes, is him basically being suspicious of his girlfriend. Like, I call, you don't pick up, blah, blah, blah. And then in the last minute, he reveals, okay, I'm just getting on you because I'm the one who's actually doing wrong,
like,
right?
Plot twist.
So he's like, the truth here is I got a secret I've been keeping from you. And then he starts ad-libbing all his wacky stuff. And he's like, because I know you're going to tear the place up, punch me in my face, pull the hot grits out. And then he just like goes on and he's just doing all these like wild ad-libbing where he's like, you know, when you really get into it, truth hurts.
Oh boy.
Please don't kill me. But yeah, it's like the last minute or so.
Yeah. Again, the reason why we need to do a Jam and Lewis episode, that's their work.
It's hilarious. You just have to listen to it because I can't sing. You need to go back and pay attention to those ad libs.
So we're going to move on to his next album. It was quite a while after he had done some work. So Confessions was what, 2004? Mm-hmm. And the next album, Here I Stand, was 2008.
Right. Which isn't necessarily a long time, but it was, I guess, long for him because we had gotten something every couple of years.
Yeah, like every 2-3 years or something. And in the time that he had done Confessions and the time he came back, music had changed a lot. And this album I really didn't like too much because it seemed that we had spent a lot of time where Usher was dictating what was happening in music, especially with the Confessions album being as big as it was. And then when he comes back, he's kind of doing what other people are doing.
Right.
Whereas, for example, Neo and Chris Brown, their first
Justin Timberlake,
their music was basically trying to sound like Usher.
Yeah. Even, I would say maybe even Justin Bieber too.
Yeah, well,
the two Justins.
At least I'll allow that one because Usher is responsible for Justin Bieber's career. So that one I'll let slide, but it seemed that when he came back, he was trying to do what they were doing.
Right.
Because like I said, the sound of music had changed.
Love in the Club.
Because if you if you listen to, for example, Neo's first two albums, it sounds like he's trying to be Usher, basically. But his third album sounds completely different.
Right.
It's a lot more up-tempo, a lot of dance influence stuff. And Usher came back trying to do that, which it really didn't connect with me.
Same. This album actually did pretty well in terms of like charts and sales and stuff, right? I think this is kind of like when we were talking about Mary, where there's a certain point where they have a new fan base as well.
Yeah, because when you sell 10 million records, you got to start catering to different markets now.
Yeah. So I don't know if maybe he was just trying to stay current with the current sound, or maybe cognizant of his kind of like superstar status or like new fans and stuff. But honestly, I didn't like anything on this album. And I think because of the way I felt about the album, I was actually shocked at how well it did. I was like, oh,
Right.
It was like number 1.
Yeah, it did well.
Yeah. I knew that Love in the Club was popular, but that's it. That's like literally the only song I knew before I listened to this.
Yeah. I had listened to it when it first came out, didn't really like it for the reasons that we've already mentioned. Is it was too big for me. Like, he's hitting too many different types of musical styles. And like I said, he's now trying to fit in rather than dictating terms, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas before, they were just doing what they were doing and the world crossed over to them. It seems now that he's trying to keep up with the current trends rather than just being Usher. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. There was the song, What's Your Name, with will.i.am. I had my head turned and I wasn't looking at the screen, whatever. So I just heard it and I was like, is this Poker Face? And I was so surprised to hear that kind of sound. Because it just, at the beginning, it was just kind of had that ding, 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 ding.
Right.
Like the Lady Gaga's Poker Face. Yeah. And so I think that kind of wraps up how I feel about this album. I was like, I don't know who this was made for, but it wasn't me. Although I do like Poker Face.
You do. You like some Lady Gaga.
I like early Lady Gaga.
Yes. Just based on that, and we really didn't listen to it much, we can just jump to the next album, which is Raymond versus Raymond.
I mean, I feel the same about this one too. I think he was still trying to stay in that sort of more pop realm.
Right.
There Goes My Baby might be the most reminiscent of the Usher we knew.
Right.
But I still didn't really like the song. And I always hated Oh My God.
I actually like There Goes My Baby. And yeah, Oh My God, I can't do that.
Yeah, I never liked that. Yeah, I think there were a few more songs on this album where we got hints of the Usher we knew.
Right.
But there was still like the club dance pop. And the only reason why I like DJ Gaga's Falling in Love Again is because I used to, well, obviously, you know, I used to teach body pump, which is a weight training fitness class. I used to teach us at Good Life Fitness. And so it's like not choreographed as in dancing, but like, you know, we would like,
because that would be funny.
No, but we would like do squats to the beat of the music, for example. Like we would go down for 2 counts, go up for 2 counts, whatever. A lot of the music that we had to do those classes to was stuff I didn't really listen to. So anything that was like as close to what I would listen to, even though this is like dance Usher, I was like, oh, I like this song because at least it's Usher.
Right.
I literally still remember the choreography for the song because I was doing it while I was listening to it. But I think if I didn't hear it a million times in body pump, I probably wouldn't like this one either. This is like Mr. Worldwide Pitbull territory.
Yes, which makes sense because he's on the album.
Yeah, he's on he's on this song. Yeah. Yep.
His career kind of took the same trajectory where you blew up and now you're doing something completely different than you were before. Yeah. But yeah, that's Pitbull, by the way, that we're talking about.
Yes. And there's a difference between Mr. 305 and Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah, 2 completely different dudes. One dude wears XXX tall tees, the other wears fitted white suits. I didn't really like this one too much either. Couple songs, but for the most part, I really couldn't get into it.
Yeah, there were a couple songs that kind of grew on me as I listened to them, but I'm not really going to go out of my way to listen to this again. Yeah. Wasn't this when he was going through his divorce? That's why it's called Raymond versus Raymond. Yeah. So the songs are kind of like all over the place. I don't know if this is maybe because of what he was going through at the time, because you have these sort of like, we're breaking up, I miss you songs or whatever. And then there's like, I'm in the club with all these girls. All right. So it was just weird. I don't know. It wasn't for me either.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of it. I call this era and even the following album, Looking for Myself, festival music.
Yes.
Because it sounds like what you would hear at these huge music festivals when you got hundreds of thousands of people in the crowd dancing and fist pumping. Yeah. This is what...
A lot of oons.
Yeah, this is what they're going to get and what they're coming to see.
Right. Yeah. Because to enjoy a festival, you have to have like a very kind of general interest. Yeah. I mean, I like specific kinds of music. Yes. So I can't listen, like when we had to sit through Imagine Dragons waiting for Jay-Z, like I'm just not, I like what I like.
Yeah.
And it's specific and I can't do that.
and that's what that 3-album run of his reminds me of.
Yeah, people who like Imagine Dragons and Jay-Z back to back.
But that's what happens when you sell 10 million records.
Right. You're going to have
you open yourself up to a whole new fan base and you can do different music now.
Right. It's weird because I really, really, really like Rihanna and she tends to have a wide variety of music and I like all of it.
Right.
I don't know why for me it just didn't work with Usher.
I think the difference is with Rihanna, outside of the first couple songs she did, she's kind of always been in a lane where everything was kind of different.
That's true. And also I think she's always been more pop than R&B.
Yeah.
Like I think she gets put more in the R&B category. She's black, but she's more of a pop star than an R&B star.
Yeah.
So maybe that, And that's probably why I like Lady Gaga, because she's a pop star too. Whereas like Usher sings a song that sounds like Poker Face and I'm like, ugh.
So I assume you didn't like anything on the Looking for Myself album? Because there were 2 that I liked. The one with Rick Ross, Let Me See. And Sins of My Father. I like those 2.
The only thing I wrote down was Climax and I Care For You had shades of the Usher that I know and love.
Right.
But I think for me, Hard to Love, which is the next album, 2016, this is where it kind of comes back for me.
Right, same.
I'm like, all right.
This is the Usher that we grew up with.
It sounds current enough.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, I get this.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then, of course, he appeals to my old head sensibilities. He's got like Luke's Don't Stop. And his No Limit. I'll see murder that. So it appeals to old people like me.
Right. Yeah, for me, same thing. This is the Usher that we knew and loved. So this one was a lot easier for me to listen and get into.
Yeah.
And I actually listened to this album when it came out rather than just skipping through it and like, nope, next, see you next year.
Yeah, I think after Here I Stand, I was just like, meh. But then also, again, around this time, so Here I Stand came out 2008. I would say around that time, I think I just sort of stopped listening to new music, period, because I wasn't really listening to radio, so I wasn't really discovering new stuff. Streaming was becoming something.
Yeah, and it gets to the point then where you don't listen to the albums, you just listen to the songs.
You just listen to the songs and you listen to stuff that you want to listen to. Like, oh, I'm just going to put Mary J on. I'm going to put Teedra Moses on. I'm going to whatever. I think I just wasn't discovering new music. Like before, it was like you knew when a new album was coming out and you'd go buy it and stuff. So I think just the way I was listening to music was keeping me from just discovering new music, even if it was from artists that I already liked.
Right.
And so, yeah, like pretty much stuff after 2006, 7, like I just don't really know anything like, or very much.
That makes sense because especially in the past few years, how everything has just become singles driven.
Right.
Like we really don't get albums anymore that people have to go out and get. We get a collection of playlists.
Yeah.
Like, here's a song from this person, here's a song from this person, and I'm going to create my own compilation rather than sitting down with somebody's full body of work and enjoying it. Just a different life now.
Yeah. So doing this podcast has kind of forced me to listen to new stuff.
Yeah.
So like I was pleasantly surprised by this album. I think I want to give it a couple more listens.
Okay.
The first song, Need You, was the one that jumped out to me first. I really like that song. The other stuff I like, but it's one of those things I need a couple more listens.
Okay. So you hadn't heard it until just this week or whatever?
Yeah, today.
Oh okay.
No, yesterday. I started listening to it yesterday.
Yeah, I remember.
Finished it today.
I listened to it when it first came out because Pharrell and Robin Thicke gotten sued for blurred lines. And the song that he has on here with Nicki Minaj kind of sounds like it. So I was like, how is he getting away with this?
I remember us talking
but
about this.
Robin Thicke is getting shut down by Marvin Gaye's people because you can hear how that was influenced by Marvin Gaye as well. So that what kind of brought me into the album. And then I just ended up listening to the rest of it and was like, hey, I actually kind of like this after being off of Usher for a couple years. So I had been listening to it for a while.
Okay. The Need You song, the way it starts off, I was like, and then maybe at 30 seconds a minute into it, I was like, something changed. And I was like, I love this song. And I listened to it like 3 times in a row.
Yeah, that's my favorite one on the album.
Yeah.
Either that one or the one with Nicki Minaj, minus Nicki Minaj. Like if there was a version that we could have without her on it, I would prefer that. But
I don't even remember that song now.
She Came to Give It to You. Those are the two that I like.
The other one I like, which I mentioned to you last night, was Let Me, because it had the, depending on what your frame of reference is, Ready for the World or the I Know Jay,
Right.
Let Me Love You Down sample. Although the official sample credit is Ready for the World.
Right.
I thought I Know Jay first.
I just think it's hilarious that that's your reference went to that.
Because you're old.
Still. I know both of them, but because I never liked that version of it, like that's the last person I would have thought of.
Well,
like you could have given me 20 guesses to pick any random artist of my lifetime, and I never would have thought about that at all.
That was first thing that popped into my head. I put it on afterwards. So I have a little mini memory / story about that too. So I was still in BC again when that song came out, the I Know Jay version. And I remember watching Much Music. They had a live performance of that song. And they had all these dancers and stuff, and it just looked so much fun. And this was back then when I thought being a fly girl was like a real job I could do or something. Or I still had dreams like one day. But and I remember one girl who was one of the backup dancers, and she was terrible. Because I was like, if she can do it,
anybody
I can do it, right? And I was like, oh, Toronto looks so fun. And I'm like, I hate it here.
It's what led you to Toronto.
Kind of. I mean,
one of a few things.
Yeah. At that point, I was like, fuck Canada. I'm leaving Canada altogether. I ended up in San Jose because my sister was out there at the time. And then, long story short, that wasn't working out. I was like, if I got to go back to Canada, I'm going to go to Toronto.
And here you are.
Yep. And then eventually dragged your ass over here, too.
Yep. Here we are.
Yep. We'll be back in California at some point.
Yes, definitely. So his next album is called A.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an album with him and this producer from Atlanta, Zaytoven.
Mm-hmm.
This one's not for me.
Nope.
It's definitely not for me because I don't listen to a lot of current music, and that's definitely what this is.
Very much like this is like if you like
Future's on the album.
Future,
so if you like Future, Gunna, that type of stuff, this
kind
is
of
the album for you.
Yeah, the newer Atlanta rap.
Yes. And
but you want to hear some R&B.
Right. And basically what I got from a couple interviews that he did about the album is basically he wanted to write a love letter to Atlanta.
Okay.
And here we go. This is Atlanta in its finest.
Yeah, for younger people.
Yeah.
Or people who like this version of Atlanta.
Right. I'm sure there are people our age in Atlanta who love this album because this is what they're into.
Yes, that's their home.
Yeah. Me, not so much.
Yeah, I don't have any favorites on this one.
Yeah.
One thing did pop out though. I can't remember which song it was. The one is like, did she tell you this and that? Did she tell you this and that? But you know, he's singing to, I guess, presumably her boyfriend.
Right.
Right. Like, did she tell you I raised her confidence? Or like, did she tell you? But he goes something like, did she tell you I paid for that body? I'm like, ew. I'm assuming he means, I don't know, butt injections or something.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with that.
However he means it. I'm like, that's a weird thing to say.
Is it when you're talking shit to somebody though?
I guess. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I only listened to it
this album.
the one time, and yeah, it's just not for me. If there's anything else he's going to be doing in the next couple of years, I'm going to probably jump on that because Confessions 2 is coming later this year, apparently. That I'll wait for.
Yeah.
This one, not so much.
Kind of like what we've said before, too. Like, even if it's not for me, there's a difference between not for me and terrible.
Right.
And so if he releases something new, I'll check it out. But it's not like, ugh, Usher's done. Right?
Oh, no.
No.
Because there's a couple songs that, like singles that he's released in the past couple years.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to California last night for the first time. It's from one of these TV competition shows where you get to write a song for a celebrity or something. And California is pretty cool. I like that one. It came out last summer, I believe. And there's one with LMA that you might like because it samples I Liked by High Five. It's called Don't Waste My Time.
I don't like it.
Oh, you don't?
No.
That's surprising.
Because he also has a song with, what's her name? The one that's always getting yelled at on social media.
That could be anybody.
Her alternate account is like Intergalactica Whore or something like that.
Summer Walker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why do I remember her alter ego and not her name? He has a song with her where they actually sample "You Make Me Wanna," one of his songs, right? Something about these new R&B girls mixing with like old R&B. I don't think I like it, or maybe it's just certain songs.
I can't say that I've heard that, so I don't know.
Yeah, it just doesn't work for me.
Okay, that's interesting.
I thought I would like it.
You are anti-sampling. You're an old.
Yeah, right. Since when I've been anti-sampling when
you don't like your songs being sampled.
Yeah, that's it.
The same way our parents were like, man, that's just Rick James. That's you now.
Your parents, not my parents. Remember, they were watching Paris by Night.
Yes, parents of our age.
Yes. Maybe. Yeah,
that's what it is.
Just
you just don't like people sampling your music.
Nope, that's not true, because there are songs that I like. I have a personal playlist called New R&B, and it's basically any song after like 2015 or something, because there's so little new music that I like. There's like 20 songs on there. Although there are some newer artists that I like, Anderson .Paak.
Right.
And I really like Division, which are two guys from Toronto. I wouldn't be surprised if Usher is one of their influences, because they have a very similar style. And I actually saw a video of them singing Nice and Slow somewhere recently when I was just looking up Usher stuff. So there are some new artists that I like that sample and do throwbacks to my artists. I just don't like that one.
All right. Oh, I left this note here, the California song. Mm-hmm. It's funny that whoever wrote it obviously wrote it during the pandemic, because there's a line where Usher says, Atlanta is open, but I ain't going out though. And that made me chuckle.
Was Atlanta ever closed?
It wasn't. But at least he said that he wasn't going out. Or the person who wrote the song on this competition said he wasn't going out.
That's funny.
That doesn't mean that Usher wasn't going out. All right, so I mentioned that he says that Confessions 2 is coming in the next couple months. He's also got a residency in Vegas.
Yes.
Starting in a couple weeks, as a matter of fact.
In my notes, I wrote, if we can ever go outside, I would like to see it.
Yeah, because we're at the point in our lives where acts and musicians that we listen to are getting residencies in Vegas.
I know.
And usually you think about that and it's like Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Elton John, all these older artists are doing these residencies, and now the people we grew up listening to are doing residencies.
Like in my mind, Usher is still like 28. And obviously he's not, because he's a year older than me. And I damn sure ain't 28.
I looked it up. He's 42 years old. Yeah. So our peers are now doing residencies.
That's kind of sad. Next stop, what is the boat cruise called?
I'm not doing any Tom Joyner cruises. No.
Well, you know who we won't be two-stepping to if we end up in an all-white party.
I'm not doing a Joyner cruise. I might do Essence Fest. That's as far as I'm going.
Okay.
Not doing a Tom Joyner cruise. But I would go check out Usher in Vegas.
I think the U.S.-Canada border is still closed.
It is.
Right, so we'll see.
It should be opening up soon. And I think it's running through like January or something. So maybe later in the year.
We might. Fingers crossed. We'll see.
Yeah. And to prep for the show a couple weeks ago, he was giving out Usher bucks at a strip club in Vegas. And one of the strippers is complaining on Instagram, I believe, about these Usher bucks that he was throwing in the club with his face on it. But she framed it as that's all he was throwing. Right. But one of his representatives was like, no, he was actually throwing out real money too. She just neglected to say that. And then the next day she's like, well, I didn't say he didn't throw any money. I just said he was throwing these Usher bucks, which is hilarious.
Usher bucks.
All right. So since we're getting to the end here, do you have a suggestion for our listeners to check out?
I would just say, if they're like me and just kind of like gave up on newer music, to give the Hard to Love album a try.
That was going to be my suggestion too, for the exact same reason.
Okay, I wouldn't say given up, just kind of like fallen by the wayside.
Yeah, because those 3 albums, there's 1 or 2 songs on them that I liked, but for the most part, it was something I couldn't get with.
Yeah, but this one was like, I would like to listen to this again.
Yeah, Hard to Love was solid, in my opinion. So check that out.
Yeah, I don't know if this isn't a suggestion for listeners per se. I mean, I guess it could be, but I would like to watch him play Sugar Ray Leonard.
Oh yeah, we meant to do that.
Yeah.
He's in a movie about
Sugar Ray Leonard.
He's in the movie playing Sugar Ray Leonard, but the movie is actually about Roberto Duran.
I don't know who that is.
He's another boxer, and him and Sugar Ray fought a couple times.
Hands of Stone.
Yeah, because that's what they used to call Roberto Duran, Hands of Stone, because he used to knock niggas out.
Okay.
So it's a movie about him, and he plays Sugar Ray Leonard in it. And we had meant to watch it a couple of days ago and forgot.
Yes.
So we'll probably watch that. And also remember to check out the Poppy Collar video because it's ridiculous. Usher dancing on fire trucks, playing football, and kicking boxes in a warehouse.
Sure.
So check those two out.
All right.
You got anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
Not really. I think we've said it all.
Yes, we have.
I'll probably remember something later.
As soon as I hit stop.
I should have said this. I forgot to say that.
It happens every single time.
But here we are.
Can't do anything about it.
Here we go.
All right. On that note, we're done. Thank you again for checking us out. Make sure to tell a friend to tell a friend. That way we can get some more listeners. If you're enjoying the shit, we can continue to do it. Check us out on social media at Troy Podcast, on Twitter, on Instagram, Black Planet, MySpace, Plenty of Fish.
Plenty.
Tinder, Bumble, everywhere at Troy Podcast.
All right. The last few places.
Maybe not at the last two places, but definitely on Twitter and Instagram at Troy Podcast, or you can check us out at troypodcast.com. Everything you need to know about us is on the website. The website is still being updated, but there are some things to see right there right now.
Couple things.
Yeah, it's worth checking out. You can go see the colors changing on the website. It's pretty cool.
But we are working really hard on bringing you some extra goodies.
Yeah, so until then, check out what's currently there. Also, if you would like to check out an Usher playlist that we put together, just search the title of this episode on Spotify and it'll come up. Also, if you want to hear other playlists that we've done, you can just search Troy Podcast on Spotify as well. On that note, it's time for us to go because I'm hungry and I want to get something to eat.
It's dinner time.
It is. So we'll see you again in a couple weeks. Bye.
Bye.